Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I want to talk about something that comes up a lot in tarot, and that's how to interpret cards that are often seen as difficult. Cards like the Three of Swords, the Seven of Swords, the Tower, or the Devil can sometimes feel intimidating at first. These are just a small sample. There are other cards like the Ten of Swords, the Five of Swords, but I just wanted to give you an idea. And it's easy to assume that when these cards appear, something really bad must be happening. But in my experience, these cards are not here to frighten you, they're here to get you back on track. Something has gone off the rails, and they're just trying to get you back to a place of joy. Um, they're here to clarify something. So today I'm going to walk you through a few of the most misunderstood tarot cards and to show you how to interpret them without fear or drama. But before we look at the cards themselves, I want to share one simple idea that can change the way you read tarot. Tarot reflects energy, patterns, and experience, not fixed outcomes. So, a quote unquote difficult card doesn't automatically mean something bad is happening. And sometimes the most important information doesn't come from the card first, it comes from how something feels in your life. So, as we go through these cards, I want you to think less in terms of prediction and more in terms of understanding. Okay. So, let's start with the Three of Swords. This is probably one of the most feared cards in the deck. It's often associated with heartbreak, betrayal, or separation, and sometimes it can reflect those experiences, of course, but not always. The Three of Swords can also point to emotional pain that comes from distance, not necessarily betrayal. For example, it can reflect a situation where two people care about each other a great deal, but circumstances keep them apart. For example, if a spouse has to work out of a different state for a while and there's that physical separation, and so it's not a third party situation. It's just that circumstances are keeping them apart and they miss each other, and that hurts. The Three of Swords can also represent growing pains. Swords often relate to the mind, and the number three can indicate development or expansion. So sometimes this card appears when you're going through a moment of clarity that feels uncomfortable, but is ultimately really helpful. Ultimately, it will make you stronger, and that will make you happier. I sometimes think of the rain in the writer and the Wade Smith version to be purifying. That rain is purifying. It's uncomfortable in the moment, but it will help you grow. It's not pleasant, sure, but it's necessary for whatever reason. Instead of immediately assuming the worst, you might ask, what is becoming clear here? Because not all pain is a sign that something is wrong, right? Sometimes it's a sign that something is being understood. So, next, let's take a look at the Seven of Swords. Move these guys around. So, the Seven of Swords is often associated with deception, cheating, dishonesty, and in some cases, it can point to that. But it's important to approach this card with care because the Seven of Swords can also represent strategy, subtlety, or choosing not to approach something directly. The figure in the card is moving quietly. He's like tiptoeing around rather than confronting the situation head on. So, this might reflect a need to be thoughtful, to move carefully, or to protect your energy, taking a subtle approach rather than confronting something head on. It can also be helpful to turn the focus inward. So instead of immediately asking, is someone deceiving me? You might ask, what am I noticing? What am I feeling? And what is the situation asking of me? This card can sometimes show up when we're overthinking something or when a situation is draining our mental energy. So, how many swords are we going to allow this situation to take from us? And one very important note here, it's best to be cautious about making definitive claims like infidelity based on a single card. Tarot is symbolic, it's not evidence. So rather than jumping to conclusions, stay grounded in the experience itself. I also want to note that interestingly, when this card comes up, I've noticed that it can represent the person feeling cheated, since that card can sometimes represent someone cheating. It's come up to say that the person is feeling cheated right now in some situation. They thought the situation didn't meet their expectations. Let's talk about the Tower. The infamous Tower. This is another card that people tend to fear, understandably. It's often associated with sudden change, disruption, or upheaval. Of course, it can reflect moments that feel intense or uncomfortable, but the Tower doesn't destroy what's solid. It's important to remember it clears what's already unstable. So often when this card appears, it's pointing to something that was already out of alignment. It was already wrong for you. You were barking up the wrong tree anyway. Something that couldn't continue as it was, it had to be cleared away. So while the experience may feel sudden, it's not necessarily random. Sometimes the tower shows up when we've outgrown a situation, even if we haven't fully acknowledged it yet. So instead of seeing it as pure chaos, you might ask, what here was already shifting? What no longer fits? Because the tower can clear space for something more honest to take its place. So while it's uncomfortable at the end of the day, it might take a while, but you're going to end up in a way better place. Let's see, the devil. I feel like I'm playing those little puzzle games. So the devil, this card obviously carries a lot of weight. It's very heavy. It's often associated with toxicity, addiction, being stuck in one's ego. But the devil is less about external forces and more about patterns we're involved in. So it can reflect attachment to habits, dynamics, or ways of thinking that keep us in place. And one of the most helpful ways to approach this card is with curiosity rather than judgment. So you might ask, why is this happening to me? Instead of asking, why me? Why is this happening to me? You might ask things like, what am I getting rather from this situation? Because we don't usually stay in something, even something difficult, without a reason. For example, familiarity is more comfortable than change because change is represents the unknown. Better the devil that we know. That phrase comes to mind. Sometimes a victimhood, martyrdom can feel enticing. It feels like the world owes me something. I don't have to do anything. I don't owe anyone any apologies. Everybody else owes me. So even though it's a place of powerlessness, victimhood can feel good in a certain way. For example, we might be afraid of doing the hard work that change requires. We stay in difficult situations for a reason. There may be something familiar, comfortable, or even protective about it. And the devil simply brings awareness to that, not to create shame, but to create choice, to get you back to a place that is happier and freer. As you can see, the people are chained up, they're stuck. And finally, the moon. The moon is often associated with confusion, illusion, uncertainty. I tend to see it a little differently. The moon doesn't mean you've lost your way. It means you're moving through a part of your path that isn't fully clear yet. So you're never off your path. It's about how you're managing your path. There may be emotions rising or things that haven't been fully understood, but that doesn't mean you're off track. It just means you're in a moment where things are still unfolding. So rather than trying to force clarity, The moon invites you to move gently and be gentle with yourself, to pay attention and to allow understanding to come in its own time. And it will, even though it doesn't seem like it right now, even though you don't have a clear picture of what your future is going to be. It encourages you to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Before we close, I want to come back to something important. When working with these cards, it's essential to be mindful about how we interpret them, especially when it involves other people, even when it just involves ourselves, but especially other people. It's important to remember tarot is a symbolic tool. It can reflect patterns, feelings, and experiences, but it's not meant to be used to make definitive claims about someone else's actions or intentions. So if you ever feel yourself jumping to a worst, case conclusion, pause, take a deep breath, come back to what you actually know, and let the card support understanding rather than fear. That's important. Difficult cards don't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. They're, like I said, they're just trying to lead you back to a place of joy. They're not trying to scare you. Often they're simply pointing to something that needs your attention. And when you approach them with curiosity instead of fear, they become much easier to work with. If you enjoy this kind of grounded, non dramatic approach to tarot, I share small tarot notes like this in my newsletter. You can find the link below. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.